guys, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Becca and today I have Becca's Bookopoly round 34. So if you guys are at all unfamiliar with Becca's Bookopoly, it is the TBR game that I play every single month. I roll 2 6-sided die and move around the board. Every square is a prompt and I have to fulfill whatever prompts I land on. If this is the first time you are ever seeing Bookopoly, I will link the January edition up here, which has a full tour of the board as well as the rules. And I will of course put the entire Becca's Bookopoly playlist in the description box in case you would like to binge all 34 episodes. But for those of you who generally already know what's going on, let's see how I did last month. So last month was the Bookopoly-thon, which was my readathon, and as you can see here, we had a very hefty stack. So first up we had Learn My Lesson by Katie Robert, which was a book that featured gods. The Shadow Glass by Rinch Pecco was a mood read. Morning Star by Pierce Brown was a chance card. The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang was a book that featured disability on mental health rep. Fool's Fate by Robin Hobb was a big book over 500 pages. Buffy the Vampire Slayer Volume 2 was a community shelf card. The Heart Forger by Rinch Pecco was a book that featured monsters. A Worthy Opponent by Katie Robert was a book that was hyped. And The Beast by Katie Robert was a book that featured myth, legend or folklore. So out of this stack of 9, I have successfully read 6 of them. The 3 that I have left are Learn My Lesson, A Worthy Opponent and The Beast. And I have currently just started a reading vlog where I read all of the books in this series. So I'm currently only 20 pages into Learn My Lesson, have not started these 2 at all. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a punishment because I'm actually feeling quite pushed for time, and if I don't get to it then I just won't use it and the punishment can be scrapped. But just in case I don't make it to these books, I'm gonna take a punishment anyway. So here we have the punishment pot. We have not been in here for quite some time, but this has 12, I think, bad prompts. So things like the lowest rated book that you own. And let's see what my punishment is gonna be. Hopefully I can make it spooky no matter what it is. This one is continue a series that I don't like. Thanks. So some of you guys will remember that last year there was the Going Along, which was hosted by Ashley at Frolic Through Fiction, where we were making our way through the Books of Earthsea series. However, none of us liked it. None of us liked this series at all, so we all stopped. However, this is still on my currently reading on Goodreads because it is a bind up of the entire series. So in the month of October, I will be reading, how far in was I? Tahanu by Ursula K. Le Guin. How long is that one? It is 160 pages, so not too bad, but reading this series feels like wading through mud. So the Earthsea series by Ursula K. Le Guin is one of the first fantasy books ever published, and the first book is about this man called Ged who is very magically gifted. So he's sent to a magic school where he unleashes a demon that he then has to spend his time hunting down. So my problem with Ursula K. Le Guin is that her stories just aren't compelling to me. I really appreciate what they did, and I'm glad that I read the first few books. I definitely see her influence in other authors' works such as Robin Hobb. However, to a modern reader, when fantasy has come so far and is now so much more exciting, they're not the most compelling books to read. But I'll suck it up and I'll read Tahanu because I do want to finish this at some point, just because it laid the foundation for so many great fantasy series that I love today. So the month of October is obviously spooky season. I am only definitely participating in one readathon, which is Gothtober, hosted by Hannah from Ladette M, Tish from Little Wolf, and Olivia from Olivia's Catastrophe. I will link the announcement video down below. I am going to be on the demon team. As you may be able to tell, that is what we're dressed as today. And so far that is all I've got planned. I just get really overwhelmed by readathons in October because there are so many, and usually I just don't participate in very many, if any. But I will be doing Gothtober this year, and I want all of my books to be spooky season reading. Aside from Gothtober, there is the Halloween Smuttathon hosted by Riley Marie that is happening in the last week of the month, and I am considering participating in that as well because since I've been reading more smut, I have been waiting for a round of Smuttathon, and I like my fantasy romance, so Halloween Smuttathon is a perfect perfect time for me, so we'll see if I do end up doing that as well. Aside from that, for the first time in forever, I don't have any group books that I need to read for anything, so I do really have freedom to add a whole ton of spooky books into my TBR, providing that Bookopoly is kind to me. So that being said, let's get into our first roll. Okay, so in August we ended on fantasy. First roll, 7. A contemporary. So for roll number 1, we landed on contemporary, which is not ideal for the month of October. I started off at a really bad place on the board because the next side that I was going to hit was like contemporary and romance, which isn't what I want this month. But as I mentioned right at the beginning, the week that is the end of September and the beginning of October, I am trying to read all of the Wicked Villains books by Katie Roberts. So for this one, I'm going to be putting the Sea Witch on my TBR. Now this is not technically a contemporary in terms of genre because it is a romance. However, it is set in a contemporary setting, so it works. So this is book 5 in the series. The Wicked Villains series is a series of adult BDSM erotica that are all Disney retellings where the hero or heroine falls in love with the villain instead of the actual love interest. And all I know about this one is that it is The Little Mermaid, and I believe that the couple in here is Ursula and Ariel. Roll number 2 is a 5. And that is a romance. For roll number 2, we landed on romance, which once again was not ideal, but we're just going to roll with it. And I'm going to be reading a paranormal romance I've been interested in for a very long time, and that is Black Sunshine by Karina Halley. This was originally recommended to me by Madison from Princess of Paperback, and this one was also a gift from one of my patrons, Ash, so thank you very much, Ash, for gifting this to me. I trust Madison's romance recommendations. I think she has a pretty good idea of what I like, so if she messages me with a recommendation, then I'm pretty confident that it's something I'm going to enjoy. But this one is an indie adult romance about a girl called Lenore who was kidnapped by a centuries-old vampire. Apparently she is a vampire too, but she doesn't know, and when she was a baby she was kidnapped. A lot of kidnapping in here, but she was kidnapped by 2 vampire slayers and raised without knowing her heritage. That is all I know about this. I will say that the synopsis isn't particularly exciting, but like I said, it is a recommendation from Madison, so I do think I'm going to enjoy it. Roll number 3 is 9. And that is a fantasy. Roll number 3 was fantasy, and I had to get one big book in here because you know me, I like my chunky fantasies. So I'm going to be finally reading Empire of the Vampire by J. Kristoff. This is a super new release. Did not put it on my September TBR. It was actually intentional. I could have put it on, but I convinced myself I wasn't that bothered, like bothered enough to read it immediately, and I was wrong. I'm desperate to read this book, and I knew I was going to be, so I don't know why I sabotaged myself. But this one is J. Kristoff's new adult fantasy release. I think it's going to be grimdark, very much in the same kind of style as Nevernight, which is one of my favorite series of all time. And I don't know a great deal about this one, but I believe that it's kind of in the style of The Name of the Wind, where the main character, who is the last Silver Saint, I think, and the Silver Saints are like this religious order that fight back against the dark masses, but he's the last Silver Saint and he has been captured and he is retelling his life story. This is also set in a world where the sun set 27 years ago and never rose again, and the vampires, I'm assuming it's just vampires, are rising up and trying to eradicate humanity. Real excited for this, probably a 5-star prediction. I love J. Kristoff's writing and his stories, and I'm expecting amazing things. Roll number 4 is a double. It's a double 2. And it is other. So we got a double, which not ideal, but also never unexpected. For roll number 4, I landed on other, which is any genre that is not one of the ones that I read the most of, so like fantasy, sci-fi, or romance pretty much. And for this one, I'm taking the opportunity to read a classic horror that I've wanted to read for a really long time, and that is The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. I've seen the Netflix show of this and I absolutely loved it. I have had this a little bit longer than it's been since I watched the Netflix show, but I don't actually really know a synopsis for this one because I don't know how much like the TV show it actually is, because I know Bly Manor is quite different. But the back of this just says, no live organism can continue for long to exist solely under conditions of absolute reality. If it is anything like the show, then it is a story about a haunted house called Hill House and a family who grew up in the house and how the house has affected their lives going forward. That is kind of the plot of the show though, so like I said, I don't know how much the actual book is like the show. Roll number 5 is 7, which is most recent purchase. Okay, so for roll number 5 we landed on most recent purchase, which is always a space that I love, and my most recent purchase, kind of unsurprisingly, contained the last 2 books in the Wicked Villain series, which is already on the TBR, so Queen Takes Rose is going to be the one fulfilling this slot. Once again, adult erotic BDSM romance retelling of a Disney story, and I think, I'm really not sure about this one, I keep forgetting. Oh wait, I just saw the name Aurora, so I was right. This one is a Sleeping Beauty retelling, and I'm assuming it's going to be Sleeping Beauty and the Evil Queen, but I'm not sure. And I've heard this one isn't the best in the series. I think it's mainly set up for Sabine Valley, but Sabine Valley is the series that I want to read the most from Katie Robert when I finish the Wicked Villain series. But yeah, I'm excited to finish this series out, and it's great that I got both actually on my TBR, because that means that 2 books out of this TBR are going to be gone in the first week of the month, providing everything goes to plan. Yeah, final roll number 6 is 8. And wow, we are ending exactly where we started, on the fantasy space again. And then finally, my final roll, only 6 this month, which is great after the chaos of last month. But for this one, I landed on fantasy, and this is the prompt that I asked my patrons to vote on for the month. So because it's spooky season, like all of the fantasy that's top of my TBR is things like Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson, but I wanted something a little bit spookier for October. So I gave my patrons 4 fantasy books that have some sort of like creepy or like horror or dark academia elements. So the first option was The Devil Makes 3 by Tori Bovolino. I believe that this one is a young adult horror fantasy. They also had The Wicked Deed by Shay Earnshaw. This one is a young adult, I think it's a contemporary fantasy with ghosts. We also had The Deck of Omens by Christine Lynn Herman, which is a very atmospheric YA contemporary fantasy. They also had The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake, which is an adult dark academia fantasy. And the final option was The Deck of Omens by Christine Lynn Herman, which is a very atmospheric YA contemporary romance. And of those 4 books, the one that I'm going to be reading in October is the one that I kind of thought might win the poll, and that is The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake. So this one follows 6 individuals who have been selected to try and get into the exclusive Alexandrian Society, which is, I think they're the keepers of like all of the knowledge of the world, or the lost knowledge. Yeah, lost knowledge from the greatest civilizations of antiquity. And I believe that they're all magicians, which is where the fantasy element comes in. This has been getting a ton of hype recently, so I'm really excited to read it. I don't read a whole ton of dark academia style books, so I don't really know if I like that element of it, but it seems like it has this magical, like, I don't know if it's technically a competition. I don't know if they're competing against each other or whether they just have to complete a series of challenges. But either way, I'm on board, and I hope I really enjoy this one. So those are all of my Bookopoly books, and they're actually quite manageable, which is surprising. However, I do still need to go through all of the Gothtober prompts and tell you what I'm going to be reading for each prompt. And I do also have 3 additional books to add to this TBR, starting off with my Inner Circle Patreon pick. You guys know the drill by now. My Inner Circle patrons all recommend me a book. I put them all in here, and I pick one every month. So let's see what we're going to get. Let's try this one. And this one is Daughter of Darkness, Juliet Haggart, and this one is Chelsea's pick. Okay, this is hilarious because it took me ages to find this book on Goodreads. I don't own it, but I wrote the author down as Juliet Haggart, and the author is actually called Juliana Haggart, and I checked the message that Chelsea sent with the recommendation, and it's completely just me not writing down the right thing. So this one is an indie self-published romance, and it says right at the beginning of the synopsis, she is destined to kill a demon. He is sent to protect her. One of them is about to fail. So we have in here a male character who spent 300 years in the underworld as a punishment, and he has been given a mission to seek his redemption, but he has no idea what it is, and nobody will give him any details. And the female main character, it pretty much says absolutely nothing about her aside from that she is running away from the evil, wanting to claim her powers. Either way, it sounds really interesting. Fantasy romance, Daughter of Darkness, so not like super spooky, but still has those fantasy romance vibes. And we also have demons in here as well, so So yeah, I'm excited to read that one. Thank you so much to Chelsea for recommending it to me. Another book I need to add to my TBR is actually last month's Patreon pick, which is Grey Sister by Mark Lawrence. This one was Bobby's recommendation, and this one is the sequel to Red Sister by Mark Lawrence, of course, which is an adult grimdark assassin story about a girl called Nona Grey who is about to be hanged when she's saved from the block by a nun who takes her to the convent of the Sisters of Sweet Mercy, where she is trained to be an assassin. I really loved Red Sister and I was so excited to get to this in September, but I got held up on Fool's Fate and Sunlit Ascends. They took way longer than I expected to, and that meant that I sadly could not fit this one in, but I'm really excited to get to it in October. And then the final book I'm going to be adding is The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. This is the first book in the Lord of the Rings series, which I know was originally one entire book that is now split up into 3, don't at me, but I'm reading this one because Aaron from Booked and Busy is essentially forcing me to, but it is also on my 30 to read before 30 TBR, so I do need to read it at some point in the next 1.5 years. And this one is about, I've seen Lord of the Rings, but I didn't pay attention. Frodo, not Bilbo. It is about Frodo Baggins, who finds a ring, which is one of the 1 rings to rule them all, and he has to take it to Mordor, I think, and it is his journey to do so. Really nervous about this one. After starting Earthsea and not really enjoying it, I'm just now really intimidated, and I actually think I'm going to audiobook this one because I think it will be helpful. It will help me get the flow of the text a bit more, and I've heard that the audiobooks for this series are really good. So now for my Gothtober TBR, there are going to be a few of these prompts that I'm intentionally leaving blank because I have an idea of what I may read for them later in the month, but I don't want to say what it is in case I don't get to them, because I have been feeling quite slumpy recently, and I am of course working through the demon board as I am on the demon team. So as for the books on my TBR, the Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake is going to go in for the prompt mythology. Now this is dark academia, so I do imagine it is going to contain some element of mythology at some point throughout this book, but I'm using it to fulfill this prompt on the basis that it's called the Atlas 6 and Atlas is one of the titans. For the dark romance prompt, which honestly I feel like was pretty much made for me, I'm going to be reading Black Sunshine by Karina Halley. For the classics prompt, I actually have a few options on this TBR, which is strange because we all know that that's not my usual, but I'm going to keep it spooky and go with The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson for this one. And then the prompt that is not book related, which is demon film / TV. I'm currently hosting a Buffyverse watch along with my patrons. Pretty much every episode contains demons, and that is ongoing. It's been ongoing for a couple of months. It's going to be ongoing for quite a few more months, and I will be watching multiple episodes of those shows throughout the month of October, so that is definitely covered. So for all the prompts that I've left open, I'm pretty sure that a lot of the books that I'm going to be reading are going to have some of these elements. I just don't know yet because I haven't read them. But we have the omens prompt, which is to read a book that heavily features omens, found family, a book with found family, LGBTQ+ rep, which I think the Atlas 6 has, and then I also have of course like Sea Witch on there. Actually, I'm just gonna go ahead right now and put Sea Witch in for that prompt. We have murder with all of the spooky books on this TBR. I'm pretty sure one of them is going to include murder. We have BIPOC rep, which is one of the ones that I have a book in mind for but is not on my official TBR, and also disability rep. So this is my TBR for October. My core Bookopoly TBR actually only comes to 2,290-ish pages, so I'm pretty certain that I'm gonna get that down. It's just whether I get all of the extras in. We do have 8 books on here already. I do of course also have Daughter of Darkness, which I don't own a copy of. I'll probably read that on my Kindle, and also possibly Tahanu by Ursula K. Le Guin, which I'm actually going to try and power through the last of my September TBR in the next couple of days so that I don't have to read that book. But even with all of the extras, this TBR only adds up to around 3,600 pages, so definitely doable. I like the color scheme. I mean, Sea Witch ruins it here, but if you got rid of Grey Sister and also Sea Witch, like, we have a very thematic TBR here and I'm really liking it. So there you have it. That is my October Bookopoly TBR. Please, as always, wish me luck. Also down in the comments, please let me know what book you guys are most excited to read this spooky season. I always love me some spooky recommendations. And now I am going to go and take my fangs out because I feel like they're cutting into my lip. But please don't forget to like this video if you liked it and subscribe if you wanna. If you head to my description box, you'll find a link to my Goodreads, Instagram and Twitter if you'd like to follow me on any of those, as well as a link to my Bookish candle website, the Instagram for that, and a 10% off discount code. But that's it from me today, guys. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you will go where nobody knows. ghosts with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.